75 years ago, three pioneering Latino organizations met at Obreros Hall in Corpus Christi, Texas, and agreed to merge together to form the League of United Latin American Citizens.
Here in Goliad, I remember that a lot of the men who would come to the meeting, some of them would come in their horses, and like we used to come in our wagon, and some of them would drive them old Model Ts, and they would park their cars outside the meeting hall, which was at the old Perez dance hall where they used to have the meetings in La Bahia, which is a mile out of Goliad, and they would have their meetings there.
There's no question that the Founding Fathers took a risk when they first created the organization, in as much as they had to risk their jobs, they had to meet in secret, they had to meet at night. In many instances, not only were their jobs in jeopardy, but in some instances their lives were in jeopardy.
I always believed that my dad was let go from his job in 1937 because he was a LULAC president here in Goliad. He told Mama that because he didn't plant 1 acre, that his boss let him go, told him that he didn't need him no longer. But I believe that it was because he was a president of LULAC. And back in those days, it was dangerous to be a LULAC member.
LULAC organized and provided funding for the Salve Tierra versus Del Rio Independent School District. This was the first class action lawsuit against segregated Mexican schools.
I'll tell a story which, if I may, it won't take but a minute. I was shining shoes, and I was hungry that Saturday, and I was walking down the street looking for for a customer. And this white man, Bolillo, he was walking down the street, had a bag of bananas. I don't know how many bananas he had, but he was eating one of them. And I walked alongside of him and asked him if I could shine his shoes for a nickel. No, he didn't want to shine. So I kept on after him. I finally came down to 2 cents, I believe. He still wouldn't have it. And finally I told him, said, look, I'll shine your shoes for a banana. And he wouldn't hear it. Still, he had that one banana that he was chomping on. Finally, we stopped for whatever, it was a light or something. He looked at me and he says, "Hey, Mexican, you like to have a banana?" And I said, "Yes, I sure would." So he took that banana and squashed it in my hair, on my head, and soaked it in real well.
I know, I made it a point one time when I went back to Calvert, and I stopped at the barbershop and I had a new car parked right in front. And I don't know what the gentleman thought, but I walked out of my car, walked in. "Do you have time to give me a haircut?" "Yes, sir." They helped me take my coat off. You know, they cleaned the chair, the barber chair, and I sat down and they gave me a haircut. "Are you passing through?" "No, I'm coming here to Calvert." "Is that right? Well, you gonna go into business here? Because your barber always talks right." "No, I am a lawyer in Corpus Christi, Texas." "Oh, is that right?" "Yes. And I am here to see my father, Ruben Bonilla." The conversation didn't last long after that, but I got him a haircut, paid him, and gave him a tip, and then went to see my dad. But that's the first time I got a haircut, and the last time, I might say. On purpose, I went to see. Now, I want to see him throw me out now, because as the old saying goes, I knew my rights then, and I was able to fight for them by myself. But I had no problem. But I didn't go back again, because why should I leave my money there if they're still bigots? And I'm not saying they were or weren't, but I was the only Hispanic at that barbershop when I went that day.
Well, it's very different now than what it was then. Tremendous challenges. I can remember going into Pleasanton, Texas, for example, which is about 30 miles southeast of San Antonio, to organize what we had been told was going to be a group of about 45, 50 people, and getting the directions, going into that town, and having difficulty finding anything that looked like a meeting place. So finally, after about almost an hour going back and forth to this section of Pleasanton, there was this little young lady there, about a 9-year-old girl, in the front lawn watering, and so stopped, got off, and asked if this certain family lived there. And she said, yes, this is the house, he lives here. And not seeing any cars for anywhere, not in the driveway adjacent or down the street. I said, well, is this the place for the LULAC meeting? He said, yes, they're all waiting for you. And I thought, well, maybe she doesn't know what I mean. So we went in, this team that I had, and sure enough, there was about 50 people there inside that house in a family room type setting. And what had happened is that they were so afraid of retaliation, the threats that if they organized LULAC, they would be fired from their respective jobs, that they had all been dropped off one by one on a Sunday afternoon over a period of time so that they would not arouse suspicion.
In 1940, LULAC plays a major role in filing discrimination cases for the Federal Employment Practices Commission, the first federal civil rights agency in the country.
Well, the life was progressing gradually. We'd be getting somewhat better. Jobs were more available with the programs that President Roosevelt initiated, the WPA, the CCC, and other programs that were federally funded. Jobs became available, although they were still not as available for the Hispanic community. At that time, we were not Hispanics, we were Mexicans, and we were proud of it. We didn't want to be called Hispanic, because that would mix us up with other portions of the Hispanic community. But anyhow, we managed to get along very well. Then, of course, the war came on, and things really changed then. Now, after the war, there were a lot of the people who were in LULAC up to a time and since then, who went to school and became attorneys and doctors and whatever, mostly through the GI Bill of Rights that was established by Congress right after the war ended. So that was a big help to the Mexicanos, where they were able to get an education and really make progress and make life easier and better for themselves.
Currently, we're celebrating the opening of the new World War II memorial, and there were many Mexican-American veterans who came back from the Second World War to find the doors of opportunity closed to them. After having fought for our freedoms, they still were discriminated against when they came back home because they were Mexican-American.
After World War II in 1946 in Santa Ana, California, LULAC files the Mendes versus Westminster lawsuit that ends 100 years of segregation in California's public schools and becomes a key precedent for Brown versus Board of Education. In Houston, Texas, LULAC pilots the Little School of 400 project in 1957, which was a preschool program dedicated to teaching 400 basic English words to Spanish-speaking preschool children. This program became the model for Head Start under Lyndon B. Johnson administration.
Senator Yarborough met with a group of Hispanics from the NEA, Hispanic teachers, and in Phoenix, and they persuaded him to sponsor a law that would set up a system of teaching people in Spanish, and we called it the Bilingual Education Act. Senator Yarborough sponsored the law, and he got it passed, and it became the first bilingual education law that was ever enacted by the Congress of the United States.
In an effort to attain better jobs for our community, in 1966, LULAC and the American GI Forum joined forces to organize SER, Jobs for Progress, now the largest and most successful work program in the nation. But that wasn't always the case.
Hispanics moving up the ladder. In Corpus Christi in 1960, when I returned to practice law, the postmistress at the time would not allow Hispanics to work at the counters to serve the public at the post office. Hispanics were not allowed to answer the telephone. That we only had one Hispanic police officer who had the rank of sergeant. No other Hispanics with any rank. We only had one captain in the fire department. So there was great. There was not much opportunity given to Hispanics, or much hope given to Hispanics, to rise up above these mediocre positions that were generally offered to the Hispanic. Today, an Hispanic is a fire chief. An Hispanic is the police chief. Today we have elected Hispanics running, helping run the city council, helping run the school boards.
Because of the growing demand of having to take legal action, in 1960, LULAC creates the Mexican American Legal Defense and Education Fund, known as MALDEF. This becomes the legal arm of the Latino community.
Well, Pete Arena, who was the president of LULAC Council Number 2, was the lawyer, and he tried a case in Floresville, Texas, I believe. And he found out that the jury, there was no Mexican Americans on the jury system. So he postponed the trial in order to get a Mexican American on the jury. On the retrial of the case, they still didn't have any Mexican Americans. So he wanted to correct that system in the state of Texas so we could get Mexican American on juries who tried us. So he went to the Ford Foundation and the NAACP Legal Defense Fund after forming a group out of LULAC, Council Number 2. So that's how MALDEF was founded, in order to fight discrimination on grand juries and the jury system. And we did do that. In San Antonio, we filed a lawsuit to correct that system. And we won the lawsuit, and so the juries were desegregated, so to speak. And now you find a lot of Mexicans in juries in Texas and elsewhere.
We had, when I was employed by the Office of Federal Contract Compliance, we had housing discrimination. There was a company in New Braunfels, which is between Austin and San Antonio, had a gypsum mine. They owned a gypsum mine. In fact, still, when you travel in that road between San Antonio and Austin, you see the cliffs, the white cliffs on the side. Anyway, there the company was owned by U.S. Gypsum Company, and they had Mexican American employees as well as Anglo employees, and they provided housing for their employees, for some of their employees, and they had very good houses built for their Anglo employees and shacks for the Hispanic employees in a different street. They were a ways away, the whites from the Hispanics that were working for the company, and I went down there and made an investigation, and actually by the time I got there, they had heard that we were coming, and they had cleared out all the Hispanics from the sheds and bulldozed them, and then they had made a proposal that they were going to sell the houses to the people that that were renting those houses from the company. So all the Anglo houses were left, and all the Anglo employees who lived in them were going to benefit from the work that we had done. Mm-hmm. So we told them that would be discriminatory as well, because if they were really going to sell it to their employees and only to their Anglo employees, that would be discrimination piled on top of discrimination. So they agreed to not to sell it to them and to open it up to everybody that wanted to buy it, with the condition they had to move the house away from the premises. So most of those houses were bought by Mexican Americans.
Access to capital was huge, and everything that means, from the difference in and now it's a difference in a person being able to buy a used car versus a new car, being able to purchase a home without having a huge amount of money to give down, being able to access credit, being able to remodel, but access to capital, access to better paying jobs was very, very important, because it was a huge challenge.
In 1970, LULAC files the Cisneros versus Corpus School District lawsuit that defines Hispanic Americans as a minority for the first time.
Well, Hispanics were not recognized as a group. I mean, we were just, you know, some people, you know, that were here. There were no identifiable government identifiable indexes that existed as far as Hispanics were concerned. The Census Bureau never had ever counted Hispanics, or if they did, it was very minimal. I mean, it was not just in terms of counting, but just they counted Hispanics, but they did not take down the specific conditions of life that they did on populations as a whole, blacks and whites. So there was hardly any attention at all from the government side in terms of the plight of Hispanic employees.
In 1973, LULAC creates the LULAC National Education Service Centers to provide educational services to Hispanic students. Today, LNESC serves more than 20,000 students a year through its network of 17 educational centers throughout the country.
Well, we needed to start LNESC because we realized that not enough Hispanics were getting into college. And our analysis showed that the reason we were not was lack of counseling in the high schools, lack of involvement of the kids. They said to tell them it's possible for you to go to college. Sí se puede, sí se puede, and to start preaching that kind of sermon. And third, getting into college itself was getting more and more difficult, and even fourth, the problem about money, how we were going to provide an incentive for kids to get into college, in addition to some money to help them get in, and those were the main purposes of LNESC at the time. It was a proposal that was developed and sent and funded by the War on Poverty program, and we set up about 12 different cities, the LNESC program in about 12 different cities throughout the country, and proceeded to encourage kids to get into school.
Economic and business development. So we felt like we needed to go out to the corporate community, go out to the business world, and bring in more allies so that we could strengthen the base of LULAC, which has always been education. The Constitution states that, I believe, if I remember correctly, that education is the cultural growth and development of our society, that education is the foundation, and that all orderly growth and development comes from persons being educated. And who better to articulate that than the son of immigrants who knew no English and who never became naturalized citizens until very late in life, and who were throughout their life treated with great disrespect despite being great contributors to the American economy. So I took those themes and tried to galvanize Hispanics all across the country. I said that LULAC is only a vehicle to address Hispanic concerns. LULAC will be used as an instrument of change.
In 1986, LULAC plays a leading role in the formation and passage of the Immigration Reform and Control Act of 1986.
We saw by the late 80s that if all the advances that we were making in civil rights, in education, and in pushing our children into and making sure they stayed in college, that was going to be short-lived if when they got out they didn't have access because of their surnames to capital, that they were not going to be as credit worthy, that their insurance rates on their automobiles would be much higher because of where they live and not how they drove.
In addition, the issue of immigration, which is still important today, but at that time Carter had proposed some immigration reform, and we took him to task for that. There was a lot of talk about building a so-called tortilla curtain and keeping Mexicans out, literally. And because I'm a son of Mexican immigrants, those issues have always been close to my heart, and I empathize greatly with the plight of the indocumentado.
In 1995, LULAC establishes the Commitment with America, a set of legislative positions developed to address crucial issues confronting Hispanic Americans.
One of the greatest things that I've done with the help of many others was when I was Secretary of Health and Welfare. I started bringing in Mexican Americans in the state government in California, and I brought in hundreds of them. I remember when I became the Secretary of Health and Welfare, I had a meeting with my staff, which was all Anglos. So I told them I had to make changes in the office. For instance, I would have to hire a receptionist who spoke Spanish because my mother didn't speak English, and she might call me and not be able to get through to me. So I wanted to change that system. So when I left the office, it looked like the United Nations.
Well, you know, LULAC, and thank God for its good history, has always been respected by the powers that be, and that's because I attribute this to the fact that our principles, our Constitution and bylaws say very explicitly that we embrace wholeheartedly the concepts of the United States of America's Constitution, that we embrace the English language, that we embrace and promote education. So, you know, you can't fault that. If you fault that, then there's something wrong with you, not with the organization.
In 2002, the LULAC challenge is issued to candidates for elective office in order to establish their position on the top 10 issues of concerns for Hispanic Americans.
LULAC stands for an equality, an essence of being as good as you can be, an essence of being the best that you can be, but just as important, a recognition that you are an individual who's as qualified, as able, and as gifted as any other individual on this planet. So LULAC to me it's equality. It is an equality potion, if you would. It is an equality plateau. And so I don't know of any other way to describe the organization, but it is that.